to install MySQL, go to a browser and type MySQL download and hit enter, and click the first link we found, which is mysql.com downloads, and we drag this to the bottom almost, and click MySQL community GPL downloads, and then we are looking for the MySQL installer for Windows. Here is the one. We're assuming we are installing the MySQL on Windows. So here we see there are two versions of the installers. One is for the web version, and one is the offline install version. And it looks like they for 32-bit. In fact, they can be both can be installed for 64 as well. And to save our computer space, we use 2.3 megabytes web version download instead of 439 some megabytes. So we click the web version, and we skip login sign up, and just go to this link. No thanks, just start my download. Okay, we start our download, and this is the download. This is the installer file, runnable file. Okay, after it's completing, we click this one to start running the installer, and we should click yes with this one. Now click yes to continue. Okay, come to the page. We have some few options, and we normally, if you use Visual Studio, we can select developer default because it requires Visual Studio installed. And for people like me, I don't use Visual Studio. I can select custom to select the essential parts I want to. So I click next, and I see a few items here. So I need to MySQL Server, that's required. So I click the top one, move over, that's good enough. And then I need the applications. Workbench, if you want that Workbench, you can select Workbench, the top one, and go back. Then Visual Studio, that's what I don't want to, so I don't select. And shell, I select top one, and move to the right box, make sure. Okay, go back. And router, I need it, so I select the top one, move over. All right, and the connectors, MySQL connectors, if you are using Visual Studio, Microsoft ODBC, definitely you need this one. And the C++, if you need, you can click and select, but I don't use, so I don't click it. I may use the connector J, so I just use this one, and I come back. And the connector net, .NET, I don't use. Python, so I don't select those. And even documentations, and the examples, I don't need those. So I'm not selecting those ones, only the essential ones for me. And then now we can execute, and take some time. Still running. Okay, now it's complete. The installation is complete. We move to product configuration by click next, and then ready to configure, so we say next, and we select the default development computer, and everything's default. And remember, this port number is 3306. In the future, if you want to configure the port, that's the one we use. And the pipe name, MySQL, we use all the default, and click next. And the authentication use strong match. Okay, we use the default one, recommended one. Say next. And here we need to use password, and we can just use a general one and easy one. It's weak, it's okay, but for production we have to use a strong password. Then strengths here need to be strong, but for our case it's okay. So add a user, and user we create one as a admin, and we can the password we use a password. It's weak, it's okay for my case here, so I say okay. And we just add one user, and that's good enough. So I say next, and the service name, remember, is MySQL 80, and we use the standard system account, so we say next, and we can apply the application right now for all the ones we selected. So execute, and it's running. Okay, it's complete, so we click finish, and we have configuration, the second one to configure, so we say next, and this is a router configuration. We used all the default as well, and we say finish, and it's not needed. Next. Okay, so we click finish, and okay, so the shell and the workbench opened. That means we done. Okay, to make sure MySQL is installed successfully, we go to MySQL shell, use a few commands to prove it, and first we need to connect to the database, to the MySQL server, sorry, connect the root, that's the name we need to, the default, add localhost, because we are installed on our local machine, so it's always localhost, and remember the port number is 3306, that's the one we need, and hit enter, and then we need to provide the password, and that's the one we need to remember. Make sure when we install that password is very important, don't forget it. Okay, so we do we need to save? No, we just say alright, so now it's logged in, and we need to switch to SQL mode. Right now it's JS mode, so we need to change to SQL mode, so we say SQL. Okay, now switch to SQL mode. Then let's show databases. Okay, so semicolon, make sure end it with, see, it's good. So we have we show the internal system databases. So to make sure it's really working, we can create a simple database, say create database MyDB1, let's say, okay, and okay, one all created. So we create a database to make sure it's there, so we can show databases again. Now we see MyDB1 is here. That means our installation is successful. By the way, we can check the MySQL workbench to make sure the installation is complete as well. Since I closed both, so I go to bottom left and search for MySQL. Then we see workbench, MySQL workbench is here. So click it. So and we open it, and then we see the bottom left localhost colon 3306. This is the root user, the default. We can also use our own user we created before as admin. So from here we say add, and we create a connection name. Let's say we just use my connection tool, and the default username is root. We want to use our own admin. We create it during installation, and we can say OK. Then you see the admin user is here, so we click it and type the password we added before, which is say OK. Then we see the my db1 is here. That proves our installation is completed successfully.